Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Jack Sheldon here. Welcome to this webinar that we're holding today. We're going to be holding it twice. My name's Jack Sheldon. I'm from the IEC Central Office, and I'm the Secretary of the Standardization Management Board, the SMB. And I'm running this seminar with Thomas Sendko from the German National Committee. And we're going to try and give you today some information about how national committees can participate in the work of the IEC. Your microphones are muted. This is to keep a bit of the noise down. And the best way to submit any questions is to use the questions or the chat box, which you should have on your screens. You can submit questions or chats at any time, and we'll try and answer them as they come along. I'm going to start off the presentation, and my colleague Thomas Sendko will take over about halfway through. We've got about 45 minutes to an hour to talk today, and we're going to be speaking for about half that time, and the rest of the time is up to you completely. So with that, let's get started. So we get started with the contents of our presentation today. I'm going to start off, and I'm going to talk to you about what's written about national committees in the statutes of the IEC and in the ISO IEC directives, which talks in general about what national committees can do, how they can get involved, and the best ways for them to get involved. And once I've finished, I'll be passing the floor to Thomas Sendko, and he will be talking to you about practical implementation of what, at least I hope so, practical implementation of what I've just been talking about.
I'll do my very best.
Thank you very much, Thomas. So let me start off by talking about the rights of national committees. So full members of the IEC can become either P or O members of technical committees, subcommittees, or systems committees. They can also take on the work of secretariats of these various committees. We have two classes of membership in the IEC, full members and associate members. And the associate members pay smaller fees. They can access all the documents of all the committees, but they can be participating members of only up to 4 of those committees. In practice, trying to be a P member can take up a lot of resources. I'm going to be talking about that in a second. It's a fair amount of responsibility to carry out your responsibility as a P member. And if I take the case of Germany, who's working with me here today, I suspect that they use up a lot of resources in being P members of pretty much every single committee in the IEC.
Will you just explain the abbreviations, Jack? So P and O member?
Yeah, I'm just coming to P and O members. P and O members, participating and observing members of technical committees. Cool. These are my next few slides, a couple of slides down. I'll be talking to you about what P and O members are. And the abbreviation TC, SC, and SYCs, technical committees, subcommittees, and system committees. So the national committees, in becoming members of the IEC, actually have obligations. It's not just a question of paying your membership. As a member of the IEC, they need to be fully representative of all national interests in their particular country. They do that by promoting the objectives of the IEC, that is, the IEC as an organization. They have to support the IEC work, and they need to, they have an obligation to implement, where possible, IEC international standards at the national and regional level. So IS international standards. We also ask our national committees to support the IEC in protecting its trademarks and its copyright, and asking them to ensure that there's no unauthorized copying and distribution of IEC documents, and more particularly of the standards. So let me get back to, I've got a question. What's the difference between a technical committee and a systems committee? I'm afraid I'm really not going to answer that today. I'm going to give you a very, very high level response today. That will have to be for another day, because otherwise I'm going to be spending the whole of my time on that.
That's an idea for another webinar, yeah?
It's an idea for another webinar, as Thomas says. The systems committees are a relatively new type of committee that were created about 3 or 4 years ago now. They're committees which deal at a very high level of standardization, looking at horizontal issues and coordinating work between a larger number of ordinary technical committees. I'm going to leave it at that at the moment, because otherwise we get into a very, very long discussion.
Yeah, maybe one thing, that it's not only related to IEC-TCs, but also related to fora and consortia outside. Yeah, so this is the market approach of the IEC in this area.
Yeah, it's a more open approach to participation in the work as well, because it's, they will work with other organizations, consortia, and so on. Yeah. So thank you for the question, but I'm not going to go into any more detail today, I'm afraid. Okay, so P&O membership, participating or observer membership. NCs, national committees, can choose to be P, O, or non-member of each of the IEC's 200 or so technical committees, subcommittees, or systems committees. So you have a choice, and we're going to look into what P members can do and what O members can do in a second. Whatever you choose, all national committees can vote on all CDVs, committee drafts for vote, and FDISs, final draft international standards. And I've got another question. How do we prevent unauthorized use and distribution of IEC documents?
Next webinar, please.
I think I'm going to let Thomas answer that one, because he's probably got more experience on that one. Though I suspect Germany is probably relatively well behaved in that sense. Thomas, can I pass you that one to deal with when you get into your part of the talk?
Yes, I'll make a note and try to come back to this point. Yes.
Yeah. I think it's better that you look at it than me from a practical perspective. Yeah. So all NCs, all national committees, can vote on all final drafts. So this is full members. The associate members can vote on the committees on the documents of the committees of which they are P members, but not on the other documents. So P member, the P stands for participate, and as a P member, the National Committee has to participate actively in the work of the committees they've chosen to be a P member of. As a P member, you have an obligation to vote on all matters and documents that are sent out for vote. And as an example there, I've put down 3 types of documents that regularly get sent out for voting and comment. NPs, new proposals, proposals for new work. CDVs, committee drafts for vote. And FDISs, final draft international standards. There are actually plenty of other documents as well, but those are the ones that will fill up your in-tray the most. We expect P members to contribute actively to meetings. We would like P members to take part physically in the meetings wherever possible, but we accept that that's not always feasible, and that it is sometimes necessary that it's not possible for someone to travel all the way around the world. But then we do require that P members do contribute to the meetings by, for example, commenting on documents. We are experimenting. We have an experiment underway to allow remote participation in plenary meetings, and I believe this is something that will increase in the future. And as a further point, the P members have the right, and we encourage them to do so, to appoint experts to participate in project teams, working groups, and maintenance teams, which are the groups that operate in technical committees and where the real work actually gets done. This is where standards are actually developed and written. O membership. The O stands for observing. The O members follow the work of the various committees, so they can access all the documents of all committees. The full members can comment on any of these documents. They can vote on the final documents on CDVs and FDISs, but they can't vote on new work proposals. They can attend meetings, so they have the full right to attend meetings, but they cannot appoint experts to participate in the work of working groups and project teams. And finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about the management committees of the IEC, because national committees are actually there to participate in the work of the management committees. I'm going to use as the example the SMB because it's the one I know best, but the other management committees of the IEC are somewhat similar. The SMB oversees the management of all the standards work in the IEC. It has a chair who is appointed for a 3-year period, which can be extended once. So he can serve, the chair can serve for 2 3-year periods for a total maximum of 6 years. The SMB has 7 automatically elected members from the biggest members of the IEC. They're the ones who pay the largest contributions and who hold the largest number of secretariats. And those are currently Germany, France, China, the UK, Italy, Japan, and the US. And each of those members can appoint someone who can serve, again, up to twice of 3 years. So you can see we have, excuse me, we have a rotation of the members, of the people who sit on the SMB. The other 8 members of the SMBs are appointed from the full member national committees, elected by the IEC Council for a 3-year term, and they too can serve a maximum of 2 terms. So you can see we have a fairly constant rotation of the members of the SMB. And the photo you see at the bottom is a picture of the meeting we had in February this year. So what does it take to get on the SMB? And this is some of the information that's on the checklist that's at the back of the IEC statutes. Well, we expect people who get elected to the SMB to have some experience of the world of standardization. It's a bit difficult being thrown in to an SMB meeting, which has even more acronyms than I'm throwing at you today, and to understand what's going in there. We work in English. Now it's a question of being practical here more than anything else. we can't work in 20 different languages. It would cost too much, and it would slow our work down. We expect members to attend SMB meetings, and there are 3 of those per year. We expect SMB members to participate actively. That is obviously to attend meetings, but more particularly to look at the large number of documents, I'm sure Thomas will complain about that we send out every week. It's fairly typically somewhere between 10 and, it's a good 10 to 15 documents per week. At the moment, there's a bit of an avalanche because we have the general meeting coming up. But we expect SMB members to read these documents and to comment on them. And that's the harder part of it, obviously. We expect SMB members to work as a board member and not as a representative of their national committee. So as a board member, you're looking after the higher interests of the IEC as a whole rather than the national interests of the national committee. So it may be you have slightly different views depending on how you sit. To uphold basic principles that run through the whole of the IC, consensus and good governance. To understand how the SMB works, and perhaps most importantly, to think strategically. That is to think fairly long-term and high level, and not get too much bogged down in detail.
I think that's the most important thing in this list of topics. Yes.
Yeah. Last but not least, I'm tempted to say exactly.
Yes. Thank you for this. Yeah. No, it's about to really drive the IEC in the right direction. It's together with the other management boards coming together and see what's going on the TC level and how can we improve the performance of the organization. How can we help the TCSC to do their job properly without building up too many rules and procedures and keep them busy with the technical work and not with the administrative work. So I think that's the challenge.
With that, I am going to hand it over to Thomas to take over from here. Thomas, it's in your hands.
Okay, so thank you, Jack, and welcome out there. My name is Tom Sandko. I'm serving in the SMB for the German National Committee. I looked it up right now. It's since 2011. I'm the alternate of the German National Committee, and my member is Michael Teigler, which he's also the managing director of the DKE, which holds the German National Committee of the IEC here in Germany. So what I will tell you is hopefully a little bit more from the practical side, how to drive the National Committee. And maybe just one disclaimer before I go into details. This is the ideal picture. Of course, you will challenge your own obstacles and challenges in your country. We're not living in a perfect world, and so we have to maybe adjust sometimes a little bit how to drive. So I will give you an example how we do it in Germany. Luckily, when I started in the German National Committee, we had the experience of about nearly 100 years behind us. So I wasn't forced to start from the scratch, but really I'm trying to enhance our system daily. So keep it flexible. That's maybe the other message to you. If you want to have it real, practical, or you need some references, then I would like to make a reference as a standardization guy. You can look it up in the IFSIC Guides 21, and there are 2 parts: how to adopt standards and what's behind us. So we can go to the next slide. Jack, can you go to the next slide, please?
It should be on.
I should be on, so I can do. Oh, it works fine. So what's it about? We, as the National Committee, we see ourselves something like a servant to the market we live in. So representing the IEC is one thing, but get the market on board is, I think, the most important challenge. So we have the obligation to reach out to the national market, and the most important thing is to do our job and get them on the table and deliver input to the IEC system for the benefit of the IEC community. On the other side, we take care about delivering the IEC work as it is done to the national market. So we have some kind of interface between the international IEC and the national market we have here in Germany. Always have in mind that I'm talking about the market, that it's not only the industry that is participating in standardization, it's also the regulation, it's also the small medium enterprises, it's also some kind of infrastructure, critical infrastructure deliverer. So you have the public transport, for example, and a multiple set of different kind of stakeholders. And the challenge is to have them all on the table discussing about the content of the IEC standards. So now it's not working.
No, I have to move the slides for you, I'm afraid.
Okay, good. So coming back to Germany as maybe an example, fortunately we have a number of associations in Germany representing different stakeholder groups. And in the DKE, we act on, well, we are directed by these, we call it a council or steering board. So even my general manager here in the DKE is reporting to a group that represents the German electrotechnical market. So what you see, or maybe on the picture, is a very small one, that there is a number of well, associations sending experts to our council, giving us direction in the area of electrotechnical standardization. And what you see there is, we call it ZVEI2. It's on the top. It's the Association of the Electrical Industry. Of course, they send us 7 delegates for the different sectors of the electrotechnical area. But we also have, well, the communication side. We have the public transport. We have the ISO-based input coming from the machinery sector. It's VDMA. We have the automotive industry in there, and we have the general non-electric technical standardization represented by DIN in Germany, also there. And of course, we have the craftsmen also represented by the ZDH. It's it's association. And yeah, there's some regulation part also. There's 3 representatives coming from 2 different ministries in our area. And I have to say that the DKE is a private organization, so we don't get any funding from the ministry. We are related to them. They are part of the market as they regulate the market in some way. And they support the standardization on a project base. But anyway, they are only there's only one stakeholder in a set of diverse stakeholders in the DKE. Next slide, please. Okay, so the DKE is a company, and we take care mostly about standardization in the electrotechnical area, but we do some other things like projects to well, get innovation into standardization, or funding of well, spreading the knowledge into the market about standardization. And maybe coming back to the question, how is the access of IEC standards in Germany done? So, of course, the regulation, so the directives of the IEC say we have to take care that there is no unauthorized access to IEC standards. So, as a member of the IEC, we own the right to publish standards in Germany. On the other hand, we are the institution in Germany that is allowed to set these standards in this area. So we have the authority provided by the Ministry of Economics, that we are the responsible organization for distributing standards into the market. On the other side, we have the access to the IEC database, having access to all the documents, and are able to derive national standards on the base of IEC standards. So what we do is adopting standards because we are a member of the European Union via CENELEC, but in the end, it's a one-to-one copy from the IEC standard in most of the cases. And these standards are our own property, and we are selling these standards. So we have two publishing houses available in Germany. There's a DIN printing house and a VDE printing house, and they sell electrotechnical standards to the markets. That's it, and that's the way we finance the system. So an unauthorized access is nearly impossible. You have to buy these standards, and they are not accessible online. Of course, we enable the market to participate in the standardization process, having the chance to access the drafts freely in a web-based tool. So you can have a view on the national German standards drafts via a web-based tool, and on the other hand, you have access via the IEC website to all the CDVs that are published. So you can access freely to the CDVs published on the IEC website as well, and you can comment on them. And well, we answer to these comments as the German National Committee when the comment comes from Germany. On the other hand, we have a list of information points spread around Germany. So most of all, it's the universities and other authorities. And there you can go to and take a look in every standard available, and for free. And you can buy these standards page by page as well in these information points. Yeah, that's maybe to answer the question. It's a copyright issue, of course. So market representation in the DKE. This is my major point in this area, to be the responsible body for the standardization in Germany or in your country. It's all about getting the market engaged in the process of standardization. So I showed you the slide where we have the council, but we have the market players represented on every hierarchy level. So the next point is that we have a department that is called technology. It's taking care about the content of the standardization, and we have technical officers mirroring all the IEC work. So there is a mirror committee for each IEC technical committee, driven by a technical officer and a representative from the relative sector of the German market in this area. So they are doing this as a team, the technical officer as a secretary, and the chairman of the mirror committee is somebody from the market. And each department of the area of technology, energy, health, mobility, and so on, there's also one participant from the market driving this department. And he's sitting then also in the council, and there is this kind of system that we have all these market players sitting on each hierarchy level in the German National Committee, driving the DKE, and the rest of the staff, about 100 people, we are serving the market for the sake of standardization. Next, please. Okay, just giving you an overview of what we do. We call our committees and subcommittees, committees and untercommittees. That's the abbreviation you see on the slide. We name them differently. That gives us the chance to mirror different IEC TCs in one committee. So on a national base, we combine the work of TC 46 and 86, for example. It's communication components. So we are mirroring the copper cable and copper connectors for information technologies, together with the fiber optic connectors and fiber optic cables, which is, well, the German market players, they are mostly companies that provide both copper and fiber optic cables, and therefore we said it makes sense to have them sitting together in one committee, doing the standards together, and well, in the same direction. And you see we have subcommittees there for the different types of cables and connectors, and this is also mirroring the subcommittees of the IEC. But we also have major committees that are mirroring 2 or 3 minor IEC TCs to really save experts travel expenses and getting more experts on the table. Next slide, please. Yeah, that's what I said. The market is represented also in this mirror committee. So it makes no sense to have 3 industry people driving a committee if you ignore the input from the rest of the market. So the industry is a major stakeholder in the work of the IEC and in the work of the National Committee. But you have to have in mind that the industry also has a direction, and they want to sell their products and want to put their content into the IEC standards. And on the other hand, we have maybe the user of the standards, or the industry that only adopts the content of the standards, or you have the user in the market that relies on the on the standard for the sake of safety or security in our times. And therefore we have to really try to get all stakeholders from the market into this committee, and that's the most important challenge. And our secretary / technical officer in the DKE is really challenged by this task to really have the representative from all of the market stakeholders at his table. So this is the challenge. In the end, the whole IEC is consensus driven, and that's why you have this all stakeholders thing. Yeah, you have to come to a consensus that not only one stakeholder is pushing the IEC in one direction. Next slide, please. Good. So the process of drafting and voting. So you might know that we have this process on the right that just says the IEC or the IEC community is drafting a paper. Then it's going through a various number of drafts, and in the end there is a publishing of the IEC standard on the IEC website, and you can buy this on the IEC web store. But it does not work without the participation of the National Committee. So the National Committee is a vital part in this process, because the IEC TCSC, of course, there are experts working on this level, but to have a quality standard, you need the input from around the world. And of course, you have some regional deviations coming from climate or from regulation side. But in the end, the physics of electrotechnology is the same nearly worldwide. So what we are doing is, if there is a new suggestion for a new standard, we ask our National Committee, Mirror Committee, what do you think? Is this a good idea to have this standard? So this is the first point where we ask our Mirror Committee, do you want this standard, yes or no? And then every time a draft comes up from the working group that is working on the international level, we provide these drafts to the Mirror Committee, giving them the ability to send comments to this draft, and then the working group in the IEC also discusses this input. So what is the working group in the IEC level? It's nothing more or less than the representatives from the national committees. So we are sending experts from the German National Mirror Committee to this working group, and they discuss with all the other participating members in this group the standard and how to include the comments coming from all over the world. And that's the real asset of the IEC, to come to a consensus with the comments from the worldwide community. So, and what you see here is that we always refer, if there is a new document, we spread it to the market. So we have an electronic tool where we publish all the documents coming from the IEC Secretariat of the TC to the Mirror Committee, asking them to comment on and send these comments back to the Secretariat. And that's the most challenging part, I think, in the whole system. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. Yeah, of course, if you have a consensus-based organization, then it can happen that not all of the stakeholders on the table feel very comfortable with this consensus. So each and every decision can be appealed by each and every member in the market, even if he's not part of the Mirror Committee. So it's everybody in the German market has the right to refer to the DKI and say, hey, you're doing standard in one area. I don't like this standard. I don't like this subclause of this special standard you published on your home page as a draft. And it's a problem for my product in the market, and I don't feel very comfortable with this standard. So please change this. And then the Mirror Committee opens up, invites this appealing entity, and they discuss with them, and hopefully they come to a consensus, bringing this consensus back to the IEC, and it has to be discussed on the IEC level again. So you see, there is always this kind of ping pong between the market, between the national committee and the international committee. So you need to have some kind of proper workflow and some kind of plan how to deal with some kind of appeals coming from the market as well. What you see here on the slide is that we have this available, and we have different steps of escalation that you can take if you don't feel very comfortable with the standard. But in the end, when we have this standard available in the market, we can be sure that this standard is well accepted in the market. So that's a challenge. Next slide, please. Yeah, what's this with this national delegation? You find several organizations around the world that are doing standards, and they call themselves standardization organization, and they shout out to the world and say, hey, come to our table and do standards. And then you have maybe 500 people sitting in one room talking about a standard, and in the end, well, there's a number of participants in this organization that really, well, builds up this set of standards. The difference in the IEC is that we have this national delegation principle, that we are doing it, as I told you in the last slides, with this special system of mirroring the work of the IEC TCSC on a national level, bringing all the stakeholders from the national level to the national table, discussing this and sending them the input to the international TCSC. We can be confident that the 60 nations, is it 60 or 61? 60 nations around the world contributing to the IEC work are, well, this is a kind of democratic institution we have. So all the NCs can send their comments, can send their experts to this TCSC meeting, and the decisions are made by the principle of one country, one vote. So no country, no region can dominate the IEC. I think that's the very important difference to any other organization we find out there in the electrotechnical area. So what we do is we sit together in the mirror committee preparing the IEC-TC meeting, and then the 15, 20 people from the German market, they sit together and say, okay, the meeting is coming up. Who is able to go to the TCSC meeting on behalf of the German National Committee? And they say, okay, we have one representative. This is the head of the delegation, and we have some extra people traveling with him or her and representing the German National Committee, maybe in a working group and in the end at the plenary where the hard decisions are made in regards to standardization. And then when they travel to the TCSC meeting, coming back, they give some kind of report to the mirror committee, and they say, okay, we managed to put our comment in the standard. This is the content we delivered. But of course, they must be able to have some kind of consensus on the TCSC international level, and they have to, well, argument this consensus at the national level again. So they have to explain why they came to this consensus. So it's a challenge for them traveling to the TC meeting, coming back with a consensus that might be not that nice for the local market, but it's the consensus of the worldwide meeting. So only the experts accredited by the German National Committee can travel to the TCSC meeting, and the secretary and the chair and the technical officer of the IEC TCSC, they take care about well, that only those experts participate that have this accreditation from the National Committee. So it's a serious issue. There is one deviation that the working group meetings, there the expert take part at the as an expert, and then the documents derived from the working group, developed by the working group, they are then confirmed by the TCSC, and then again we have this confirmation by the national committees. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, and I think this is one of my last slides.
Yes.
Just want to show you two faces. I'm proud to have Mr. Roland Bend as the president of the German NC. So he's not part of the DKI, which is the company running the German National Committee. He is CTO of Phoenix Contacts in Germany and worldwide, and he is driving the German National Committee on behalf of the German market. And Michael is my manager and director at the DKI, and he is the national secretary, but serving also the German National Committee as the secretary to Mr. Roland Bend. And I think that's all from my side.
Yes, yeah, that's it. That's your last slide, Thomas. Thank you very much. I hope that's given you some idea of how to run a national committee from the practical perspective. Now it's really up to you. If you've got any questions, any further questions, please don't hesitate to try and write them down. As I say, I prefer to use the written method because we've got about 30 people online, and if I open everyone's
50.
Sorry?
We have 50.
We got 50, have we now?
Yeah.
Yes, we've got 50 people online now, effectively. If I open up everyone's microphones, it will make a lot of noise. So if you've got any questions, can I ask you to type them in, either the questions or into the chat mode? Either will work. I've got both open. I'll give you a few seconds still.
Maybe we can do some advertisement for the upcoming IEC general meeting.
General meeting, yeah. Well,
so I think we were both there, and everybody who's on the line there can approach us.
Yes, I think so. So the IEC general meeting will be taking place in Busan, in Korea, It is from
22nd
to the 26th of October. Both Thomas and I will be there. And I've actually got a question.
Cool.
Yes, can NCs, when they're O member, participate in general meetings? Well, we've got into a set of confusion here. National committees participate in technical committees, so that they participate in technical committees as either O or P members, but they participate in the general meeting as a whole as members of the IEC. So all national committees can take part in the general meeting, however it is. So a national committee can take part in the general meeting in any case. All national committees can take part in the general meeting. In the general meeting, there are a large number of technical committee meetings, but there are also the management meetings, and there are a large number of events. Have a look at the general meeting website to see what's going on there. It's a very, very busy week. You'll see people like Thomas and me running around in all directions.
Yeah. But it's also, a really a great. It's really a great organized. Well, a family meeting, you see. Yes. So all the national committees come together, and we have the council meeting where all the members of the NCs come together, and you see each other, and you can talk to each other. There's the presentation of the central office and from all the presidents and vice presidents, and you really should use your influence at that level as a member. So you have the NCs having the right to vote on all the topics that come up in the council in regards to who's really sitting in the standardization management board, who's sitting in the council board. So use your right to influence the IEC and to drive the IEC in the direction you want the IEC to be driven. So, and it's really an amazing time. This 1 week, it's a very busy time for, well, those who participate also in the management meetings. But in the end, that all the events taking place at the fringes of the meeting, this makes this a great event, and that's the most important thing, is to, well, give your input to the IEC at that time. Yep.
Okay, let me go back again, because I've had quite a lot of questions here now. How does the National Committee operate in Brunei? So Brunei is not a full member of the IEC. In fact, it's not a member at all of the IEC. It's part of the affiliate program, which is designed more for countries which are slightly smaller and don't have the resources to participate fully in the work of the IEC. In many cases, they don't have an operating national committee the way that Thomas has just described it, because they're too small, effectively. Brunei does have a national committee. I've just looked it up whilst the question came up. It's under the Ministry of Development, and it's under a department called the Authority of Building Control and Construction Industry. That, frankly, is all I know about it, I'm afraid. You would have to contact me probably best by email if you need further information, or in fact, probably best is to contact the person responsible for the affiliate program, Thomas Robertson, if you need further information. Dear Thomas, dear Jack, thank you. See you in Busan. Oh, that's Jörg. Thank you, Jörg. Do national secretaries sometimes take part in IEC meetings to prevent the national standpoint, or is that not the idea? Well,
it's not the idea, but of course it's possible. Yeah, but
yeah. Well, I certainly know some national committee secretariats who turn up at technical committee meetings. There's absolutely no reason why not. If I could say this, and I hope Thomas won't take me badly, he won't take it badly if I say that. In the case of smaller countries, that can happen perhaps more frequently than it might do in the case of Germany, where there are sort of huge numbers of people around. I think basically.
Yeah, there's no rule against this, and that's maybe one thing, that we only define the things that are really necessary. So if there is only one person able to travel, and this is the National Committee Secretary, of course he can do this on behalf of the National Committee, yes, of the Mirror Committee, yes, of course.
And just to give an example of this, someone might ask, when was the last time that Jack Sheldon took part in a technical committee meeting? Well, I've taken very occasionally part in technical committee meetings when I've had colleagues who couldn't go or fell ill or whatever. And I must admit, it's very important for me to keep an eye on what's going in technical committees to understand the problems they have. So yes, I think it is important that even national committee secretaries occasionally get their hands dirty, if you will, so to speak. Okay, next question. Is there any federal funding in Germany available for international business trips? Other countries can get some funding on traveling expenses. Thomas.
Just to answer the question shortly, no. So we have some funding for projects, to getting some new innovative products into standardization. This is done by several authorities in Germany. But the travel expenses for the TCSC meetings, for the general meeting, whatever, working group meetings, well, it all comes from the market.
Okay, next one is also for you. Does DKE have a mirror committee for the TCSCs for which it holds membership, or
Yes.
are the observers individuals? Wondering how this affects O-member voting.
So I cannot say anything about O-member voting because unfortunately we are P members in every TCSC in the IEC. Unfortunately, because it's a hell of a lot of work to do. So as I said, we have mirror committees. Some of them mirror 1 or 2 TCs in the IEC, but normally we have one mirror committee for every IEC TCSC. Hope this answered the question.
Okay. Okay. Since most IEC TC meetings are based on voluntary hosting officers from specific NCs, are there guidelines or sets of rules regarding NC hosting of TC meetings? The answer to that is yes.
Yes.
There is a very, I'm tempted to say a good set of guidelines explaining some of the basics around hosting a technical committee meeting in any particular country, and a lot of the information.
Yeah, but normally, go ahead, normally these experts are well, they don't need much. They need a room, they need some light, they need power for their laptops, they need lots of coffee and water, and maybe if you are nice to them, you can feed them, and they really appreciate this. And well, I think that's and a network, so a Wi-Fi or a cable-based access to the internet, because they work on IEC documents lying on the collaboration tool. So it's not much. You need a warm place for them, keep them safe.
Okay, thank you. So, and these guidelines are available on our website. You'll have to hunt for them a little bit, but they are there. I have a comment which I don't understand. We have the NEC. I don't understand that one, sorry. How to deal with the following situation. The CDV ballot is already closed and the ballot for the version in national language is still running for 1 more month, maybe even longer. Some comments on the national language versions were not only related to the translation, but to the IEC standard where the ballot is already closed. Even worse, the comments are not in English, but in national language. One, for one example for not so perfect practice. I tried to bring in as much comments as possible in the FDIS ballot. Is there a better way to deal with it? Well, I'm going to take the last part of that comment first. You shouldn't be making comments on the FDIS ballot. It's much too late to send in comments on a document of the FDIS ballot, because there's really no opportunities for the committee to take comments into account at that point. So the first thing is try and get your comments in much earlier in the standards process. I'm going to throw them back to Thomas to see how he deals with the problem of translation and so on.
Sometimes it occurs that we receiving comments on the CDV. We try to do a national draft on the CD level, getting comments on this. But of course, when we publish when the IEC publishes the CDV, it's accessible on the IEC website, and then we receive comments maybe after the ballot is closed already. What I do with these comments, or ask my technical officers to do with these comments, is to send them to the secretary also if this is 1 week later. So I think the experts community on the IEC level is really interested in reflecting every comment, even if it came 1 week after the deadline. So that's not the important thing. But sending them to the FDIS will only cause that they will put on a stack and kept for the next the next version of the standard, when they start the work again and go for the next version. So they are somehow lost for the publishing of the standard. So the FDIS level is definitely too late. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Is there a procedure when P members not participating in meetings for a longer time? Yes, you get letters from the chief, from the General Secretary of the IEC. And we remind you simply of your obligations. I think that's it.
Politely.
We start off politely. And then we get a bit firmer, and in the worst cases, we will suggest that the the National Committee becomes an O member. So there's a sort of gradual pressure put onto the National Committee concerned.
Yeah, it's friendly pressure, because we need the expertise of this market in the IEC. That's the story behind us. Yeah, it's not about forcing somebody to do something. It's, you have the chance, you paid for this as you are a member of the IEC, and you should use this power, and you should use your ability to send commands and participate in the work. And that's the idea behind the community.
So the next one is, can I act as chair of a TC and as a head of delegation in one of its subcommittees? Ooh. And I have to say that this comes from someone who is the chair of a TC. I'm not going to name him because I don't think that's fair.
Yeah.
But I happen to recognize the name of the person here. It's a delicate problem. You can't have the two roles at the same time. So if you are sitting in as a delegation in a subcommittee, that is what your role is. You can't then suddenly switch hats and become something else. That's the way I would look after it. It's not something that I would encourage to happen too often, because you can easily end up with a conflict of interest here. Thomas?
Yeah, totally. That's the way I would answer it the same. I would always try to avoid this double head function.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why keep the difference between O membership and non-membership for an IEC member? It brings confusion when a new committee starts. I would recommend to limit the choice between P or O for an IEC member. Well, I have to confess that some of this is historical. It's true that the difference between O and non-membership is not very significant, but there are certain cases where a national committee may simply think it has nothing whatsoever to do. I can think of, for example, landlocked countries, in other words, countries that are completely inland, not having much interest in maritime technical committees, for example. And it simply allows committees the choice of being either O or non-members. But it's true to some extent that is actually a
we can note this. We can note this, and maybe the time comes up when we talk about PO and non-membership in council or in IEC SME. So let's make a note and keep this as a suggestion for renovating the IEC directives in that area.
Yes, certainly. We have to remember, of course, that our colleagues in ISO also have the same structure. So, you know, it's also a question of aligning with them.
It's a good idea.
And then, thanks, Thomas. We have the National Electrotechnical Committee, and I suppose this works like the NC for countries with IEC affiliates. And the answer to that is basically yes.
Yes.
And that basically brings us to the end of the questions I've got, which is perfect because we're exactly 1 hour in, so we're pretty much at the end of our session. Unless anyone's got anything else to say, I'm tempted to say thank you all for participating, and particularly for participating so actively and with a good list of questions that came along.
Yeah, and thank you, Jack, for providing the infrastructure. And I think, yeah, it was a good job. Thank you so much, and best regards to all outside there. And see you hopefully at the general meeting.
Yes, and if you have any questions that come up between now and then, or even then, please don't hesitate to get in touch with either me or Thomas.
Yeah. That's why we are there.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Thomas. Thank you, and thank you very much, everyone else. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.